Hello. I need to report today on an interesting episode that just transpired between me and a certain big shot psychologist over my most recent book, The First and Last Deception. Something quite scandalous, in fact, and something that I need to expose him for in justice. But I'm only speaking about this issue publicly, really, because it touches on something very important, very general. Not just about a spat between me and some psychologist. This is something rather urgent, in fact. It's something that I was going to make a video about anyway. And then this came up, and it serves as the perfect intro to that. So I'll get to that general, urgent, important issue as quickly as I can. First, let me tell you about Dr. Robert Motta. Although I'm sorry, before even that, a real quick announcement about a video that was on my channel right here from about 5 months ago. My video, as you can see there on the screen, was commenting on the Vatican's AI document, which was excellent, applying its discernment to the diabolical apocalyptic stuff going on with Stargate and AI and Sam Altman and ChatGPT, and connecting all of that to the UFO deception. Now, News Nation, a massive platform, millions of subscribers, they've got Chris Cuomo on there, Ross Coulthard, other people. They were quite unhappy about that video, and they tried to silence me. They filed a bogus and illegal copyright claim. It took me a long time to fight it, but I was eventually victorious over it, so that video disappeared for a while from my channel, the one you can see there on the screen now. But it's back up, and you can watch it now. Although I did say a lot of the same stuff at a talk at the Divine Mercy Shrine a few months ago. So if you haven't seen that video, I do recommend it. You can find it on Divine Mercy_official, and you can look it up right there with the title you see on your screen. Father Chris Alar also spoke very beautifully and boldly about this AI deception the week before I spoke there at the shrine. So along these lines, I've got a big announcement coming soon, and I will allude to it a little bit at the end of this video. But the moral of the story is please subscribe. When I'm ready to say more about it, you won't want to miss it. All right, back to the psychologist who is now raging against my book, Dr. Robert Motta. Let's get him on the screen here. Motta is a professor emeritus of psychology at Hofstra University. As you can see, he's kind of a big deal, a prolific scholar. He was the department chair. He founded their APA-accredited doctoral program. He even published over 100 scientific papers, a licensed clinical psychologist, on the list goes. So, wow. Anyway, you can even see that a journalist from The Atlantic interviewed him in 2014. Here's this article in The Atlantic, and Dr. Motta, evidently by studying monkeys watching television, that's how we gain instructive insights into human nature, according to him. Anyway, in this article, he tried to convince the journalist who was interviewing him that she has secondary PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because her boyfriend was a veteran and he had PTSD, so she kind of caught it. And I just can't help but note here, that's just far too often the modus operandi of modern psychology. Find a way to get everyone labeled with some acronym. This way they can blame all of their vices on some condition, avoid all personal responsibility, and probably get prescribed some pill that will wind up turning them into a zombie eventually. Anyway, this poor man, Dr. Motta, is, as you'll see shortly, completely intellectually lost, as is often the case among prolific scholars, especially in his field. So why am I bringing up this particular psychologist? Last month, I noticed some emails come through my inbox, and I'm going to go ahead and share with you the first one that came through from him. But before I put it on the screen, just a heads up, I would not do this ordinarily, share an email that someone sent me, except in a rather extreme circumstance that the other person himself freely chose to bring upon himself, which is, as you'll see, exactly what we're dealing with here. And even as it is, I will be censoring his actual email address. Robert Motta. In your recent book, you replaced the UFO hypothesis with the demon hypothesis. Utter drivel. Here's this deeply insightful email that Motta sent me. As you can see, he was careful to remind me that he is with Hofstra University. Anyway, suffice it to say, we had a rather interesting email exchange in the time that followed. I won't bore you with all the details, and I'll get to the meaty part soon, don't worry. But here's just a few highlights. Actually, before I even share that, I can't help it, I gotta share this. Eventually, Motta got around to accusing me of being just closed-minded and rigid, and I found on the internet a video with my response to precisely that. Here we go.
Morning, Mr. Lewis.
Guilty
No, sir. This is initial hearing.
Oh.
Sorry, I just love that. That's an actual inmate accused of some crime. Anyway, guilty as charged. I am rigid and closed-minded, not in general, no, but with what? The deposit of faith. And I am not at all ashamed of the fact that I am rigidly closed-minded about public revelation and all the implications and corollaries that follow from it. Those are set in stone because God himself revealed them. As G.K. Chesterton said, the purpose of opening the mind is like that of opening the mouth, to shut it over something solid. Open-mindedness is not a virtue, and we got to stop thinking that it is. We got to stop allowing ourselves to be guilt-tripped into thinking that we need to be humbly open to just any absurd proposition that's thrown our way. Okay, as I was saying, back to the email from Dr. Mata here. Let me find it so I can put it back on the screen. There it is. All right, so here's how I responded, and here's the exchange that immediately followed. I apologize. I got a little bit snarky there, which I probably shouldn't have done. But anyway, yes, Dr. Mata does indeed promote yoga and acupuncture and all sorts of other crazy stuff. Here, let me put that in the screen. Here's a recent book of his. He's promoting yoga for PTSD, mindfulness meditation, which of course is a pagan charade mimicking Christian contemplation, acupuncture, drugs, street drugs, ecstasy, all sorts of other crazy stuff. He's got, and this maybe gives us some clues as to why he's so angry at my book, talking about mindfulness meditation, inclining the patient to feel goodwill towards non-human organisms and our breathing and living planet, as the Kabat-Zinn, I've no idea who that is, by the way, put it, stretching our boundaries of their minds and hearts, quoting the Dalai Lama saying, my religion is kindness. Anyway, all sorts of stuff like that you'll find in his book there. There's the free preview of it on Kindle. No, I'm not going to spend $50 on his silly book. Talking about acupuncture, unblocking bodily, spiritual energy. Anyway, all sorts of crazy stuff. Let's get back to the email here. What I want to focus on is Dr. Mata is zeroing in on Dr. Avi Loeb as supposedly a, quote, well-respected researcher. Later in our email exchange, Dr. Mata basically admitted that he is an agnostic. Here's one email in which he did that. And understanding this about Dr. Mata is going to be key to understanding what's going on with his infatuation with Avi Loeb, and that's going to give the key insight into the supreme danger of the ET UFO deception in general today. So Dr. Mata is talking about how the atheists, he says, their definitive position lacks proof, as does yours. I believe we are incapable of knowing. And then he followed that up only 10 minutes later by saying, humans are not capable of grasping what I refer to as reality, any more than my dog Sophie grasps algebra. There we have it. This is typical among secular scholars. They want to be seen as more humble than a Richard Dawkins type atheist, but they want to be just as much of a de facto atheist as those people are. They have no actual humility whatsoever. So they need a dodge. And I'll bring this back to Avi Loeb in a moment. First, we need to acknowledge how intellectually and logically bankrupt Dr. Mata's position here is. I call it dogmatic agnosticism. It's just as delusional as hard atheism. It's atheism for cowards. Just like being, quote, pro-choice is the same thing as being pro-abortion. If you, quote, don't like abortion, but you think it should be legal, you're pro-abortion. Just like someone who doesn't like slavery, but thinks it should be legal, he's pro-slavery, not pro-choice. But the really absurd thing here is that we've got this exalted secular scholar, Dr. Robert Mata. He must be pushing 80 by now, I'm guessing. A decades-long career filling up his resume with all sorts of academic prowess. And he's too stupid to see that his own position contradicts its own presuppositions. This is epistemology 101, but modern psychology tends to despise good philosophy. To insist that we cannot know X, meaning just fill in the blank, to insist that we cannot know X is the same thing as asserting we can know that we cannot know X. And that, in turn, is just as epistemologically substantial an assertion as outright claiming not X. In this case, there is no God, claiming that. So this is all to say, in more basic terms, Dr. Mata's dogmatic agnosticism is just as arrogant and delusional as hard atheism. But it seems more polite, so it's much more popular today than the hard atheism. Because if you insist that you cannot know something, that is to presuppose that you know enough about it to assert that the thing itself is categorically unknowable. For example, I can logically coherently say that we cannot know the future. Apart, of course, from divine revelation, we do know a lot about the future thanks to that. But how can I assert that? I can assert that because I know, as a Christian, that there's such a thing as free will. And I know that the mere existence of free will means that the future is not naturally knowable. This is to say, I can reject Laplace's demon. I can reject determinism. So by saying we cannot know the future, I'm presupposing that I do have the pertinent knowledge to make that claim about its unknowability. A dogmatic agnostic, on the other hand, he's making a claim just as bold as that of the dogmatic atheist. He is just as desperately clamoring to de facto reject God. He just wants to be regarded as humble while he's doing that. And this all ties in perfectly to the ET deception, which feeds precisely into this mindset. The dogmatic agnostics' very agnosticism itself involves the claim that he lacks the knowledge necessary in order to assert that either God doesn't exist or that God's existence is unknowable. Like all forms of radical skepticism, which is exactly what dogmatic agnosticism is, it refuses to be skeptical about its own skepticism. It's also just like the relativist who says there is no truth, which is the same thing as saying it is true that there is no truth. And I do a whole lecture on this each semester with my intro philosophy undergrad. It's very important. That all really, to say it is true that there is no truth, you might as well just hold a big sign saying you're mentally disabled. It's categorical hypocrisy. And it's what this great secular scholar, Dr. Mata, is doing. I could explain that even more, but then this video would get way too long. I probably already talked too much about it. I've addressed this in a few other places. Maybe I'll address it more in the future. I actually did a bit of a meditation on this topic on a video on this very channel almost 10 years ago. You can find it here on my YouTube channel, Dear Faithful, Dear Doubters, Love the Veil. And there's a screenshot from it. This is 2015, I believe it was uploaded. I've also written a few things about this. My 2019 book, The Crown of Sanctity, which you can download for free at my blog, dsdoconnor.com. You can find that in part 1. And I also addressed a similar issue in a 2018 paper that I wrote for a PhD class, The Laws of the Laws of Science. You can find that on my philosophy page, docphilosophy.com. All right, so back to the point here. Back to Avi Loeb. Here we have Dr. Mata, big shot agnostic secular psychologist, who is especially furious at me. And you'll see why soon that he really is furious. Furious at me for writing against Dr. Avi Loeb. Of all of the many, many people that I had to criticize in this book, which he claims he read, Dr. Mata singles out Dr. Loeb to defend and to castigate me for criticizing. Here, by the way, is Avi Loeb. I did a video on his claims on this channel in 2023. You can find it, and I've got the same screenshot up there. Here's what I wrote about Loeb in this book, The First and Last Deception, that apparently, I assume, this is the quote that really set off Dr. Mata. Here I am talking about the search for extraterrestrial intelligence founded by Dr. Frank Drake, the founder of the infamous Drake equation, and I think the argument can be made that Avi Loeb is the one really carrying the baton for Frank Drake right now. And he's talking about how extraterrestrials could save humanity. The Messiah might be riding on a spacecraft from an exoplanet. And basically saying that, aliens and science and AI will do everything for us that the religions once claimed God alone could do. It would be a parody of itself. This would be comedy were it not for the fact that Loeb is taken seriously. I mean, he's in the biggest organization. He's the big shot Harvard astrophysicist, one of the top astronomers in the world. He travels in the biggest, most powerful, prominent circles in ufology. He's endorsed by all sorts of seemingly good Catholics even. So here he is. And you might be wondering, so I wrote this book, obviously. I published it several months ago now. You might be wondering, has Loeb changed his tune? The answer is no. Excuse me. Let's take a look at what Loeb has been saying, Avi Loeb, in the weeks leading up to Dr. Mata emailing me. Here's Avi Loeb's own blog on Medium. You can look it up for yourself. Either artificial intelligence or the search for alien intelligence. One or the other, he's saying. And this is why I single out those two in my book. I mean, not because of Loeb, but because of just the fact in general. Aliens, UFOs, AI. Those are the two, the ET UFO deception on the one hand, the AI deception on the other hand. Those are the two main outlets of the Great Deception today. He's saying through one or the other, we will soon encounter superhuman intelligence. This will ask for humility. Again, it's this false, bogus humility, which has nothing to do with the actual Christian virtue of humility. They're always harping on that, saying it's humility that requires us to open our minds to the ministrations of the superintelligent aliens or AI or whatever. And he's deferring to the Vatican, saying the Vatican says it was wrong about Galileo, so we need to be like that and open up our minds to the aliens and the ETs. So we're starting to get an idea already, maybe, of why Dr. Mata is so intent on this Avi Loeb guy. What's next? A Q&A about our extraterrestrial siblings. Avi Loeb puts on his blog. It says it will change the future of humanity for the better, the discovery of aliens. It will trigger a quantum leap. It could trigger a quantum leap in our capabilities. But most importantly, Loeb says, and here's the key, most importantly, The discovery of technological miracles might inspire a sense of religious awe, similar to the one felt by the biblical Moses when he witnessed the burning bush that was never consumed. Those are Loeb's own words. And this is exactly what I've long been warning of with the ET, UFO, AI deception. It is quickly, before our eyes, becoming the replacement religion. A number of scholars who have studied this kind of just from a detached perspective, neither condemning it nor endorsing it. I've got an appendix on this in the book. They've all concluded accurately that ufology is not just a cult anymore. It used to be a number of UFO cults. That was the biggest problem. Now it's much bigger than that. Ufology is becoming the actual contemporary form of religion itself. And this is the supreme danger. This is why I've been sounding the alarm about this with all the zeal I can muster for so many years now. This is the great deception. This falsely dares to promise what only God can give, what only the supernatural can give, what only our Lord Jesus Christ can give, all without God, without the supernatural, without any of that, without Jesus Christ. Just, quote, science. All because of the ministrations of extraterrestrials, which don't exist. They are demons in disguise, or as Avi Loeb says, either that or a superintelligent AI. One of those two deceptions. So this is why men like Avi Loeb, despite the fact that they're completely out of their minds, this is why they appeal so much to men like Dr. Robert Mata. As a psychologist, Dr. Mata has been spending his whole life searching for truth, perhaps, but he hasn't been looking at reality. He's been looking at the disorders in people's minds, so he hasn't found anything. But as a human being, he is inescapably, despite himself, by nature a religious creature, because man is, above all, by nature religious. So Mata is seeking the beyond. He's seeking the more, the anomalous. He's seeking what some thinkers would call the numinous. And the only thing apart from God that seems to promise that credibly today is the ET, UFO, AI deception. Sure, there's other deceptions as well that falsely promise the numinous, but none come anywhere close to the magnitude of the NHI, ET, UFO, AI deception. Let's take a look at a table that I included in the book here that Mata is criticizing, The First and Last Deception. I included a table comparing the component of Christian religion to its corresponding perversion in ufology. And I did this to show that ufology is by design, by satanic design, aping the faith in every single major respect. So let me back up here. Something else, a tweet that I was going to put up. This was saved in my drafts, actually. I point out the fundamental claim of Christianity is that God became man. That is the kerygma. That is the basic claim of the faith. Scripture also tells us, however, that the fundamental claim of Antichrist is to oppose that fact. Jesus Christ in the flesh. You see 1 John 4:3. What is the fundamental claim of the ET UFO deception? It's to undermine that truth. This singular supremacy of Jesus of Nazareth as the creator of the universe, the Messiah, the one and only begotten Son of God. Undermining that while superficially allowing for it. And as St. Paul says in the second letter to Timothy, but understand this, that in the last days there will come times of stress. Men will be lovers of self, holding the form of religion, but denying the power of it. They will hold the form of religion. This is what too many people misunderstand about the reign of Antichrist. They expect someone coming on the scene like some rabid atheist, just denouncing Jesus openly and just hating him. No. Let's look at the wisdom of the prophet, Archbishop Fulton Sheen. He corrects that misnomer well. This is a prophecy. I'm convinced this is a prophecy that he gave in 1947, just before the dawn of the UFO deception, just a few months after he said this. He refers to the times of the Antichrist coming, and he positions this in the context of H.G. Wells, the father of science fiction, the father of the UFO deception in science fiction specifically. And Fulton Sheen says the Antichrist will not be so called. He won't announce himself as the Antichrist. He'd have no followers that way. And then Fulton Sheen points out the devil is never so strong as when men do not believe that he does not exist. And that's a theme I've focused on a lot before, this unprecedented explosion of diabolical signs that we're seeing amid the UFO deception. Some people say that's proof it's not demons, because demons haven't been given this much of a leash before. To which I respond, have you ever read the Bible? Do you see what it prophesies? It says there will come a strong delusion. There will come a time when he is given more power, when he's allowed more power. Anyway, read part 1 of my book for more on that. Anyway, back to Fulton Sheen here. How will the Antichrist come to win followers in this new age? He will invoke religion to destroy religion. He will even speak of Christ and say that he was the greatest man who ever lived, because the devil is the ape of God. the ape of the church. And I've got another quote there. It's just at the top, you can see, the top left. Fulton Sheen also says, and something I had abridged out from that quote on the right, this church, this so-called church of the Antichrist, will have all the notes and characteristics of the church, but in reverse and emptied of its divine content. And if I try to go through all of those details here in this video, I'll make it much longer than I want this to be. Please take, I'm putting the table right there on the screen for you. I've got chapters on this in my book. This is just a brief summary of it. But you can see every single aspect of the faith, the Christian Catholic faith, diabolically perverted in ufology, in the ET deception, everything, in fact, that we have seen since the very year Fulton Sheen gave this prophecy. And that's why we're dealing with the supreme danger here. This is not just another deception. This is the great deception. It purports to give everything the faith can give, but without the faith. And it's the only thing that does that, while at the same time getting the biggest exposure on the biggest platforms, even U.S. congressional hearings. I've got a chapter on that, on just kind of putting that all together. Why this is not just a deception, but the great deception in chapter 15 of the book, Connecting the Dots of the Apocalypse. Please take a look at that chapter. And this is why people like Dr. Mata get so angry at me when I refute it. I've toppled an idol, and I do not apologize for doing so. I should play that guilty as charged video again, which I find so funny. That's what all of us Christians should plan to do when we are set down before a judge accused of being Christians. When the reign of the Antichrist comes, we just lean back in our chair and say, guilty as charged. Then the judge says this is just an initial hearing. Whoops. Anyway, we got to topple these idols until the day we die, and have no shame in doing so. That is indeed our calling. Now, you might be thinking at this point I'm exaggerating the issue here with Dr. Mata. You might be saying, okay, sure, Dr. Mata sent you some silly emails, but he's not necessarily that angry with you, is he? Oh, he is. And that brings us to our next point, what I referred to in the beginning of this video. Dr. Mata soon realized that our email exchange wasn't going anywhere, that I refuted him, so he stopped responding, and he took his attacks elsewhere, to the public forum. And that's the only reason I'm addressing this publicly, because Dr. Mata himself chose to make this public first. The funny thing is, he really seems to think that I don't know that what he did was him. But as you'll see now, I do know it was him. And it clearly was him. Here's a recent review that was posted of my book, The First and Last Deception. There it is, by an anonymous reviewer. Someone trying to be anonymous. As I'll show you in a moment, we know that this is indeed Dr. Robert Mata. So first, let's settle one thing. This review is actual slander. This review accuses me of, quote, self-revelation. It even puts that in quotation marks. Self-revelation. Implying that I myself literally said that. In fact, I have never said that. I have never even claimed that implicitly. I've never even alluded to that. Now, even more, I have repeatedly said the opposite. I've been writing about private revelation for 15 years now at least. I've published thousands of pages on it. I've done hundreds of hours of videos on it. I have never once claimed a single, quote, self-revelation. I am not a prophet. I'm not a seer. I'm not a mystic. I'm a knucklehead. I've never received an apparition or a locution or any sort of self-revelation in my life, and I've always been very clear about that. I'm pretty sure that anyone who's followed my work would vouch for me on that. And I certainly never appeal to self-revelation in this book that Dr. Mata is reviewing. Anyway, how do I know that this review is indeed written by Dr. Mata? Let's take a look. Here is what happens if you click around to his other material. And actually, I want to switch screens here for a moment, because I don't want to just give you screenshots. I want to prove to you by actually clicking through the pages myself that you can see what's going on here. Okay, so here is his review. Here's the, quote, anonymous review on Amazon from an anonymous person. So here's the slanderous review. Let's click on anonymous here. As you can see, I've already got it open in other tabs. But okay, so I just clicked, you know what, just to make it really clear, just so that no one can accuse me of some sort of digital shenanigans here. I'm going to close out these other tabs, and I'm going to click directly on his name. And let's see what this brings us to. This brings us to all the other reviews written by this same person. There's some really revealing things here. Let's click on, let's click on this one here. No, yeah, that'll be telling, but let's actually click on this one. So you see there, it's on your screen. Okay, just remember that for a moment. I'll get back to it. Let's click also on this. Let's go back to this one for a sec. We got, just remember what this is saying, served in the air calf. Okay, let's go to this one here, and sorry, I'm looking for the one I had in mind. Here it is, this one. Okay, remember what he's saying here. And you saw me click on these live on Amazon, so you can't accuse me of making this up. I was on the ground at the first calf in Bien Hoa. Remember that. Okay, so now let's go back to my screen share here. Here's Dr. Mata. Here's his book that I was alluding to before, that I was looking at screenshots of before, Alternative Therapies for PTSD. Here's where he promotes yoga and mindfulness meditation and acupuncture and doing street drugs and all sorts of other utterly insane, crazy stuff here. From this book, JSTOR here, and as I said, no, I'm not going to spend $50 for his silly book, but JSTOR provides excerpts, and Amazon does as well in its free preview, talking about, this is directly from Dr. Mata. Now, this is, you can look this up yourself on JSTOR. He says, we were soldiers. He's referring to his own experience here. Soldiers in the 1st Cavalry in 1971 doing guard duty in an army encampment in Bien Hoa. That's Mata saying that. And let's remember what the reviews of this, quote, anonymous person said. 1st Cavalry, Bien Hoa, when? 1971. At this point, I hope no one even is tempted to doubt that this is indeed Robert Mata. But I have even more I could release if I had to prove that this is indeed him. From private emails that he sent me, that he uses the exact same words in his emails to me that were used in this review. Not to mention, this review was posted right after my email, the emails that I received from him. So anyway, clearly the point is this review was from him. And here's what's really interesting. Mata also has reviews posted to a certain book written by a certain person called Robert Mata. So this anonymous Robert Mata is posting scathing 1-star reviews to this anonymous person's posting scathing 1-star reviews to other people, but glowing 5-star reviews for his own works. And, you know, that's a bit of a problem. And let's take a look at what's happened to other people who have done similar things. Best-selling author, and this is not even a prolific scholar like Dr. Mata. This is just some crime fiction author, I think. He was really burned for posting these pseudonym anonymous glowing reviews of his own works and scathing 1-star reviews of competitors' books, which is exactly what Dr. Mata appears to be doing. So, you know, I'm pretty sure that's unethical, Dr. Mata, what I've just here proven you're doing. In fact, I think it might even be academic misconduct. I wonder how long you've been doing that. You know, you seem to be pushing 80 right now. I wonder if this has been a habit of yours for a while. And I'm pretty sure you know that's unethical, Dr. Mata. It's too bad you focused on just studying the disorders in people's minds and not, you know, what constitutes good ethics. Anyway, this is the kind of thing that can get you in the news, Dr. Mata, and not for the reason you want to be in the news. I wonder how many other anonymous accounts he has. But anyway, back to the review itself. Let's get back to the point. This is not about Dr. Mata. This is about the issues at play here. Another slander in this review is his assertion that I claim AI is the product of Satan and therefore not real. I never claimed AI is the product of Satan. That's utterly absurd. In fact, I specifically and repeatedly say in this book and elsewhere that AI in and of itself is morally neutral. In some uses, AI can even be a great good. I use it myself in some ways that I think is morally fine. Here is a direct quote from my book that Dr. Mata wrote this review for, claiming that I say AI is not real and it's just the result of Satan. Directly in my book, I say AI, on the other hand, is quite real. And I say it would be foolish to write off any AI use at all as demonic. So I say the exact opposite of what Dr. Mata says I say in his review. All right. And while I'm noting that, let me briefly bring up one other bogus review that was posted of my book. And this person, not another cheap product. Another anonymous, slanderous 1-star review from this guy. It's funny how these people who leave these bogus reviews, they never admit who they are. But Judgment Day will reveal it. Or in the case of Dr. Mata, today. Anyway, I have my theories on who wrote this review right here, or at least who the person who wrote this review follows and takes cues from online. But it's also completely slanderous and false. I never once claimed in the book that AI isn't real, as I just showed you. And on the first page of the book section on AI, I admit that it's very real, and I scrutinize it in the chapters that follow. So this person clearly, this not another cheap product person giving my book a 1-star review, clearly did not read anything except the book's subtitle and decided to leave it a 1-star review based on that. And I decided to take a look at this person's other product reviews on Amazon. I couldn't help it. Let's take a look. Here he is leaving a 2-star review for a book by a Catholic author because he claims it was written by a man. And I haven't read this book that he's talking about here, he or she is talking about. But as far as I know, this author is just trying to remind people of the traditional Catholic Christian view of marriage, which does indeed teach, and always has and always will, that the man is the head of the family and the woman is the heart of the family. But not another cheap product here. Can't handle that. Anyway, next, this is even more interesting. Haunting Adeline. He writes a 1-star review of this. I've never heard of this book before, but I briefly looked it up, and apparently this book is basically dark pornography. So I guess you could say it's good that this person left it a 1-star review, but it's actually not good because this person is proud to say that, quote, there is nothing horrible or shocking in this book. So this reviewer does not find pornographic content horrible, but he or she does find my cautioning against the AI deception to be horrible. Interesting. Anyway, I'm pointing this out here because these instances are so instructive. People getting so furious at me for pointing out what frankly should be obvious about this ET UFO AI deception, but unfortunately isn't obvious today among professional Catholicism, as you'll see in a minute. The fury, the rage that I've received for that, and I don't mind it. I can handle it just fine. But I do want to bring it to light here to show you what's going on. Anyway, there's nothing I can do about these bogus 1-star reviews from people who flagrantly lie about my book and clearly haven't read it. All I can hope for is that people who do actually read and appreciate the book will also leave reviews. So if you're one such person, please do a kind deed and write a review for the book on Amazon. All right, back to Dr. Mata. I also very clearly and specifically say, let me put this back on the screen here, in the book that the vast majority of so-called UFOs are not demonic. They're ordinary natural things that are misinterpreted as alien craft. For example, here's another direct quote from the book. I say specifically there that most of these UFO sightings are simply misunderstood natural phenomena, human technology, hoaxes, hallucinations, or whatever. A tiny portion of them that's left over that we can call non-debunkable, those are the demonic ones. So in every way, just about, Dr. Mata's review is bogus, but he does at least get one thing right. We got to give him credit for that. He gets one thing right. He says, where is it? Oh, yeah. He says that I call gender diversity the product of Satan and demons. And that, indeed, I do. And that's one of the most important reasons I wanted to make this video. And I'm sorry it took me longer than I meant to get to the point. Eventually, I'll figure out how to be more succinct, I promise. This is what I've been meaning to say for several months now. Dr. Mata's claim about gender diversity being satanic and him, maligning me for that. That's actually such a key point, and it directly speaks to where we are here in the middle of 2025. As I argue in the book, both the ET deception and the transgender deception, they flow from the same basic lie. And that lie is the rejection of Genesis 1:27. And this is utterly pivotal today, considering what's going on in the world. And what I actually mean right now is very good news. But at the same time, it's good news that I'm about to announce here that is tempting to rejoice too much in. So here's the parts of the book where I bring up this overlap. Let me put it on the screen. Transgenderism and ET belief. I've got a whole section on this because it's really pivotal. I start with that quote from Father Thomas Weinandy, one of the greatest living theologians who just obliterated belief in aliens in a simple article that I quote from a lot. But anyway, this idea that there could be multiple genders beyond male and female, it actually derives from the exact same methodology that the ET promoters use to promote belief in aliens. The transgender promoters, they say, Genesis 1:27, it doesn't say that there's only male and female. It just says there is male and female. And the ET promoters, they say the same thing. They say Genesis doesn't say specifically that only man is made in the image of God. It just describes the creation of everything, and that it only says that man is made in the image of God. It's the exact same sophistry. And the really prophetic thing here is that sophistry is directed at the exact same verse. And both the transgender deception and the ET deception are, in their own rights, extremely apocalyptic for very similar reasons. And so, I'm going to zip past this. I intended to talk about it more, but for the sake of time, I'm going to zip past this. Please read this section in the book. I quote a number of people there, like Father Dan Haran, not father anymore. He left the priestly ministry, but he argued for transgenderism using like the exact same arguments that the ET promoters used to promote aliens. It's all a rejection of church teaching. It's a rejection of Pope St. John Paul II's theology of the body. It's a rejection of Genesis. It's a rejection of Christology, Mariology, ecclesiology, eschatology. It's a rejection of the sensus fidelium. It's a rejection of sacred tradition. It's a rejection of everything that we hold dear as Catholics. Liturgy, even private revelation, just really everything. And the effect of this is is that, as I say here in the book, your whole grasp of theology, approach to prayer, and maybe even adherence to morality risks being corrupted by this one fatal premise, this rejection of the proper existential, pre-theological approach to Scripture. Is divine revelation giving a insight into the foundation of reality, or is it giving the insight into the foundation of reality? That's kind of a preamble to the faith. That's like, as I said, an existential approach you have to decide on before you even open up the Bible. And I am begging you, make the godly existential affirmation there. Make the leap of faith that when you open divine revelation, you do so with the mindset, this is the foundation. This is the worldview. This is the Word of God. This is not just a few insights into reality. This is not just a few bricks of the foundation. This is not just a Word of God. This is it. Be closed-minded about divine revelation. Don't be ashamed of it. And don't for a moment listen to those who say, oh, because of humility, you need to be open to a whole different fundamental cosmos view than the faith has always accepted. All right. So skipping past all that brings us to where we are today in 2025. This is why I've been wanting to make this video actually for the last 6 months. I got a little busy, but this is actually a perfect time to make it. We are still kind of basking in a victory, aren't we? Trump got elected, and I'm very glad he did. Don't get me wrong. And when he got into office, he did great work in a number of regards. I'm not going to turn this into a political commentary video. I just want to focus on the issue we're already discussing here, transgenderism. I'm quoting here is a news story from a pro-transgender website, GLAAD, because it kind of illustrates just quite accurately what Trump's presidency has been like. A quote, attack on trans people. And of course, no, it's not an attack on people. It's an attack on transgenderism, as indeed it is. I put a big W there so that anyone who's only seeing the screen will not fail to recognize that I am saying, yes, this is a win. This is glorious. This is great. This is wonderful that transgender deception has been largely defeated really in the last several months. It's really amazing to see how much this wokeism, transgender DEI garbage has been chased out of America in the last several months. And I'm thinking here especially of people like Matt Walsh and others like him who did excellent work to help lay the groundwork for this victory. So we have every right to celebrate, and celebrate we should. But we should also temper that celebration with one consideration. What if the whole ultra-woke transgender DEI movement of the last several years was primarily a trick, a psyop, but not the type that conservatives ever expected. A comically absurd ideology, which, though remarkably evil and certainly deserving the most zealous condemnation and opposition, an ideology which was actually primarily promoted by the devil, so that its own demise would fool lukewarm Christians into thinking that the victory has now been won. Consider that. Pray about that. And don't get me wrong, wokeism, etc., transgenderism, it caused immense damage on its own. I fought it with all my might, and I still do, and I always will. And I understand that many of wokeism's proponents did and do support its perverse tenets wholeheartedly. My point is just this. What if the immediate damage and deception and chaos that the transgender wokeism stuff did, what if that wasn't the devil's only strategy? What if his plan all along was to allow it to be destroyed? After all, it was always a complete joke. A bunch of men looking like clowns pretending to be women and expecting us to take them seriously. It was a joke. I mean, nobody could even look at this without laughing a little bit. What if the devil's plan was to allow all of that to be destroyed, to offer a tranquilizing apparent victory? If, speaking hypothetically here, if that was the devil's plan all along, it has proven amazingly successful. For example, as recently as last year, Big Tech, I could rattle off all the names right there, but you know what I mean. Big Tech was recognized as the enemy by almost all conservatives. But now, in just the last several months, now that Big Tech is embracing Trump and graciously allowing us to say that there's only two genders, Which, like, if you say that, that's about as impressive as saying, look, I have a nose. I mean, it's just people have been proud of themselves. Conservatives have been proud of themselves for saying that for recently. It's just, anyway, now that big tech is, graciously allowing us to say that, it's suddenly being treated by the same conservatives who used to realize it as laying the groundwork for the Antichrist. They're suddenly considering it an ally. Oh, Trump is giving $500 billion to OpenAI. I guess they're the good guys now. Here's the reality. Big tech's ultimate aim is the same that it always, I shouldn't say always, I don't know about always, but it's the same that it long has been. It's the same as it is now. World domination, total surveillance, total control of every aspect of our lives, complete digital saturation, handing over all of our decisions to computers, transhumanism, chips in our bodies, the AI deception. Even now, as we speak, they're putting the finishing touches on the infrastructure of the Antichrist. With Starlink and the conservatives now just worshiping Musk, he's about to lay the final chip down, the final piece down in the infrastructure of the Antichrist as he gets the whole world connected to the internet through Starlink. As I wrote several years ago, that's probably the one key that the Antichrist is waiting for to start his public reign, is to wait for every person on the face of the planet to be connected, because they'll need that internet connectivity to give the mark of the beast and all that. Anyway, I've written on that plenty before. But now we have the masses, even the conservative masses, drooling over the prospect of imminent UFO disclosure, thanks to Trump. They think that he's going to be the disclosure president, that this will usher in a new era. A decade ago, ufology was mostly liberals. Let me put that on the screen here. Hillary Clinton gives UFO buffs hope that she will open the X-Files. She was seen as the biggest hope. Now, this is 10 years ago now, when she was a candidate then. I remember waking up, thinking that Trump got elected 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, and being just so happy. But anyway, look at how much has changed. Even the New York Times extolling Clinton as the first ET candidate, the one promising disclosure of the extraterrestrials. But today, so much has changed. Today, ufology is entirely bipartisan. Maybe it's even more Republican than Democrat today. And most UFO promoters are completely giddy about Trump. I want to go a couple slides back here and point out some things that I was saying earlier. Just want to put on the screen here a couple tweets I did a while ago. Wokeism has been regarded as the ideology of the Antichrist by many recently. And I know I'm going to make some enemies by saying this, but I say that is stupid to think that. Because by saying that, you're thinking that the devil is stupid. And the devil is not stupid. He's not going to hinge his apocalyptic ultimate onslaught on a clown show. And that's exactly what wokeism has always been, a clown show. And yes, we should oppose clown shows with all our might when they dare to purport to be serious. But that's all wokeism and transgenderism and DEI. That's all that ever was. It's a clown show. Even the people promoting it could barely take it seriously. And it's on the way out now. It's largely gone, thanks be to God. And the people who are rejoicing in its demise seem to think that the era of peace is here. No. As I say here, the last deception will be astoundingly seductive. Look at what Jesus himself says about it, that even the elect, if possible, will be deceived. You think he was talking about wokeism, transgenderism there? No. These people have been forgetting the prophecies. Wokeism's demise, that's great, but it did not spare us of the apocalyptic deception. The devil's ultimate onslaught will not be a clown show. The devil's ultimate onslaught will deceive everyone who is not absolutely firmly grounded on Jesus Christ. Now, I don't know when the next phase of the devil's action will formally begin. I don't know the future. But most of the UFO buffs, they're insisting that some sort of massive ET disclosure will happen by 2027. Who knows? One thing is certain. Now is the time to be especially on guard against the whole NHI, that is, non-human intelligence deception, the UFO deception, the ET deception, the AI deception, all of these lies, excuse me, which promise us that a non-human intelligence is about to come and save us. And they're certainly not talking about God or angels. They're talking about sci-fi myths that the devil has deluded us into thinking are real, because science fiction is now the day's mythology. It's been that way for decades now, and all of that was part of a plan, a diabolical plan, in fact. It's very quickly infiltrating even the church, and even those who have been hitherto regarded as orthodox-minded. I'll get to that in a moment, but real quick, to show to you here that this is indeed part of a plan. I discussed this in my book, because this was in the news back then, that Spielberg is working on his magnum opus, which is going to be released in June of 2026. The ultimate, there's a lot of buzz about this on the forums. I've got a few stories there on the screen before you. That this next movie that Spielberg is coming out with it promises to be maybe his biggest work yet. And Spielberg, of course, is the biggest director in the whole history of Hollywood. He is probably going to give the capstone of the UFO mythology. He started it largely with Close Encounters of the Third Kind back in the 70s, and it looks like he's going to conclude it now. His ultimate push for UFO disclosure. And as I have there on the screen from Scripture, for the time is coming when people will not endorse sound teaching, but having itching ears, they will accumulate for themselves teachers to suit their own likings, and will turn away from listening to the truth and wander into myths. And Scripture also says have nothing to do with godless and silly myths. Now, as I often say, I'm not condemning science fiction. It's fine as innocent entertainment. The problem is when it becomes the lens through which you discern reality, which is defining the ideology of countless millions today. This, I believe, is precisely the myths that Scripture prophesies for the last times. It has been paving the way for many decades now. I've got a whole section in the book on this because it's so important, seeing how Hollywood has groomed us for what's happening now, not just in Hollywood anymore, but on the floor of U.S. Congress even, and on the news that we see. Anyway, it's not only happening there in Hollywood, in Congress, in the biggest platforms you can imagine, it's also very quickly infiltrating the church, as I said a moment ago. In the video I put up a few months ago on this channel about Matt Fradd, Pints with Aquinas, canceling me, I gave a number of examples of this. So I won't bore you here today with yet another overview of all that. But I do want to give, before I run out of time here, I'm already over time. Oh well, one more example of a huge Catholic name who succumbed to the deception since I did that video about Matt Fradd. And this is Father Robert Spitzer on the Lila Rose Show. Here's one clip. Feel free to watch the whole episode if you like, but you don't need to. It's just typical diabolical ET deception drivel that we've been fed for a long time now by Catholic Inc. Anyway, here is the clip.
To be catechized and they won't want to be baptized.
He's talking about the aliens, that he's at least open to being here on Earth. They want to be catechized, baptized.
And they want to be admitted into the church, and they want to go to seminary, and they're all good purposes. And do I think that the aliens who are here could have such a beneficent purpose? Yes, I do. I really do. Like I said, I find it amazing if they really have interstellar travel. Why don't they do something really evil for their own purposes? Why hasn't self-idolatry turned them into dominators, a veritable Hitler on an exponentially greater scale? Why? Because they're listening to their conscience. Yes, that's true. They do have an interior relationship with the numinous, with God. Yes, I really think that's true.
Sorry,
but
I got to pause that there. Father Spitzer, a lot of people seem to be under the impression that he's a physicist or an astrophysicist. He's not. And his degrees he has no physics degree at all, much less a PhD in that. And I've spoken to PhD physicists who said, yeah, he doesn't really know what he's talking about in these regards. And I hate to say that, but I have to here because he's speaking absolute nonsense. If he knew actual physics, he'd know, no, there is no interstellar travel. Doesn't matter if you're talking about us or about aliens, there's no such thing. It's not going to happen. And he reveals in other places in this interview with Lila Rose that he clearly doesn't have much of an understanding of physics, actually. So anyway, he's done amazing work for the faith. I don't mean to impugn that, but no, don't look to him for physics. Continuing on here.
I also think they're also learning from Christianity, or either that or they've had their own savior on their own planet, wherever it may be. To be kept.
All right. So no, he goes on he gives some qualifications later in the video, which really don't at all mitigate how horrible what he's saying here is. Aliens cloaking themselves as seminarians and wanting to be baptized in their here on, like, if I can't call this out, what can I call out? And some people are just furious at me because I put this clip up. It's like, what am I supposed to do? I can't put the whole interview up. I'll get a copyright strike if I do that. I have to chop it off somewhere. I chopped it off at a fully fair place. In fact, he said worse things at other points in this interview. But nevertheless, like clockwork, the Catholic Inc. sycophants threw a fit when I posted this on Twitter. And all I said was he succumbed. I said he succumbed to something. That's it. I didn't malign him. I didn't condemn him. I just said he succumbed. But they threw such a temper tantrum. And here I have to take a look at some of this. First, it was Father Matthew Schneider, LC. So I criticize the idea that aliens are here cloaking themselves as seminarians. And his response is, why do you object so much to Orthodox Catholicism? Man, I didn't realize, Father Matthew, I didn't realize that it was Orthodox Catholicism to say that aliens are here cloaking themselves as seminarians. But anyway, Father Matthew, he basically declared war on me a few years ago because he's probably the most outspoken defender and promoter of the COVID jabs in the whole church, and I'm a very outspoken critic of them. I wrote a lot against them back when I got kicked out of my PhD after 4 years of hard work on it because I refused to take the jab. Father Schneider wrote entire articles against me because I criticized his views. He said, no, the jabs, they are morally obligatory. You're sinning if you don't take them. And I proved how absurd and theologically bankrupt he is. And he pitched a fit and wrote whole articles against me. Anyway, the point is, he's been on the lookout against me for years now because of that. But it's not just him. We've got all sorts of Catholic Inc., professional mainstream Catholic sycophants. They want to break into that inner circle. They are just ready to condemn anyone who dares say even the slightest critical thing against one of the big names, like Matt Fradd or Jimmy Akin or Father Spitzer. So here's a couple Catholic funny guys. I hadn't really heard of them before, but Ethan Stuve and Patrick Neve, they were just furious at me for daring to say the slightest critical thing about Father Spitzer being open to the idea that aliens are now cloaking themselves as seminarians here on Earth. Ethan Steve, he says I'm besmirching a good holy priest to promote my book. I didn't say anything about my book. Ethan Stuve here is the one besmirching and slandering. I didn't besmirch Father Spitzer at all. Patrick Neve, he puts in quotation marks that what I'm saying is that anyone who disagrees with me is involved in a government conspiracy. Well, Catholic Pat, I've never said or implied anything even remotely close to that, but he puts in quotation marks and attributes it to me, which of course is yet again slander. But these Catholic sycophants know that they get major brownie points for blindly defending anyone who has a badge of being, quote, a professional Catholic. And they know that they get major brownie points for attacking anyone like me who dares to call out Catholic Inc. And, you don't have to look far to wonder why they're doing this. These are Catholic Pat and the other guy there, I already forgot his name. They call themselves the Bro Apostles, and they apparently regard themselves as very humorous. I'm sure they're very humorous. But anyway, they've put up hundreds of videos in the last few years, and they're getting, no one is watching their videos. These Bro Apostles with their Catholic comedy advice. So I guess they found a shortcut, hopefully, to finally trying to squeeze their way into a back door of Catholic Inc. is you just condemn someone like me who dares to criticize Catholic Inc., whether it's Paul Thigpen or Jimmy Akin or Matt Fradd or Father Spitzer or whoever I'll have to call out next. Even if these big shot Catholics say something utterly crazy and outlandish in promoting the ET UFO deception, and I call it out, these aspiring wannabe Catholic Inc. folk, they come out of the woodwork to attack me. And it's usually fairly young guys who've been trying for years to break into the in crowd and they haven't gotten anywhere. So they're hoping to, as I said, sneak in the back door. They're hoping maybe if we prove that we're the pit bulls of Catholic Inc., that we'll get invited in. And it still doesn't happen. Anyway, point is here, I'm going to keep rocking the boat. And I'm going to be rocking it a lot harder in the days ahead. And I don't mind the attacks. They really don't bother me. I can take it. This ain't my first rodeo. I just want my listeners to know what's going on here. This is going to be continually opposed zealously by the establishment. Why? Because they've spent decades defending the very lies that are before our eyes, proving themselves to be the lies of the Antichrist. And that's a sorry thought, to think that you've been paving the way for that all those years, pretending that you've been an apologist. Anyway, it's not all bad news. As I said in my video a few months ago, it's David versus Goliath, but boy, do we have some good Davids out there. Shortly after I put that video up a few months ago about Matt Fradd canceling me, Father Donald Calloway reached out to me. Here's his, and he gave me permission to share this publicly, so here it is. Father Donald Calloway, he, of course, has long been a great hero of the faith. I've followed him since the beginning of his public works. And he said, Daniel, a brother priest, sent me a recent video on aliens. And he said, feel free to add my name to any list you're compiling of clergy who do not believe in aliens or UFOs. He says, I don't have any videos about it, but I'm 100% against it. It is a deception from hell. May the Immaculata crush this demonic nonsense. End quote. Amen. It is a deception from hell. And I do not apologize for vigorously and strongly denouncing this deception from hell. If I've been uncharitable to any individual people, which I'm sure I have, yes, I apologize for that. But the issue itself, the issue of the ET deception, this needs to be dealt with as the deception from hell that it is. That's exactly what it is. Father Chad Ripperger, I was going to play a clip here from his recent conference against the ET deception, but again, for the sake of time, I'm going to zip past this. He really strongly denounced certain other exorcists. And this is really key here, because exorcists, of course, priests, they're the only valid exorcists. They're very hesitant to call out other exorcists, rightfully so. They have to be careful with that. But Father Ripperger strongly called out certain, he didn't name them, but certain exorcists who are going viral and long have gone viral. There's very few of them, just a couple really. But they say, oh yeah, there are aliens, because certain exorcisms, we've cast out certain entities that say they're aliens. And it's just, Father Ripperger points out, and I have this on my Twitter, you can look at the whole talk at the Colby Center YouTube channel. But he points out they are succumbing to the devil's own tricks, which, yes, exorcists can do. I have a quote there from Father Carlos Martins in his recent book. He said, an exorcist himself can become a plaything in the devil's mind games. And that is exactly what happened with Monsignor Corrado Balducci in the 1990s and early 2000s. He went viral on Italian television saying that the aliens are here to save us. And the man, I've got a whole chapter on it in my books. He was completely delusional. The poor man would pray for his soul. He died in 2008. He became a plaything in the devil's mind games. He succumbed to the very deceptions that the demons were using in maybe even the patients that he dealt with. And that's happened to other exorcists as well, including ones that are on YouTube going viral now. And I get queries about this all the time, and maybe I'll say more in the future. But suffice it to say, I've already refuted every single solitary thing that they're saying in my books. Anyway, so that I don't drone on for too much longer, more on that later. We've got real heroes of the faith. Father Ripperger here, Father Calloway, many more. Maybe I'll publish more stuff that I've received later. But back here to Father Spitzer and Lila Rose. You might be wondering if Lila Rose was just curious about Father Spitzer's view and if she was just interviewing him as a detached journalist. The answer is no. She bought the deception hook, line, and sinker. She went all out on Twitter promoting and endorsing Father Spitzer's deceptions. Here's just a few of her tweets. Here she is saying, oh, aliens doesn't contradict scripture or Christian natural law. As I prove repeatedly in my book, it completely contradicts them. Christianity completely rules out aliens. She is promoting Father Spitzer's view here that aliens are here and have this wonderful conscience. This is so delusional. She's got Father Spitzer saying aliens are just as much in the image of God as we are. That it's just on and on here. My goodness. And here, these are direct screenshots. I'm not editing anything here. These are direct screenshots from her Twitter. These diabolical sci-fi deceptions here on the videos she's putting up. I don't even want to read all these details. It's just too twisted. Let me just get past all this. Anyway, you might be wondering, what are the viewers of Lila Rose thinking about all this? Anyway, I hopped on the video itself of hers on YouTube, and here it is. New UFO evidence has us thinking, do aliens have souls? And this is her main upload with over 300,000 subscribers here with Father Spitzer. And here's all of the top comments. I just took a couple screenshots here. These are the top comments on her video. I didn't edit it at all. I didn't exclude any top comments at all. These are the top ones. So there we have it. Take a look at those. So it's pretty clear that Orthodox-minded, devout, pious Catholics, they're sick and tired of being fed this ET UFO deception drivel that mainstream professional Catholics have been forcing down their throats for decades now. A normal, pious Catholic is going to have an almost nauseous reaction to diabolical drivel like Lila Rose and Father Spitzer are spouting here. And let me just say right now, I had nothing to do with these comments. Nothing at all. Some people, as always, they're always looking for new ways to attack me, and they're claiming right now that I sent these people over to make those comments. No. I didn't even know this video. I don't follow Lila Rose. I didn't even know this video existed for almost a week after it was published. Someone told me about it, so I clicked over to Lila Rose's channel to take a look, and then I saw these comments, which I didn't even know about, so clearly I had nothing to do with them. This was just a bunch of people entirely on their own initiative telling Miss Rose that they want to hear the other side. And in case you're wondering, the answer is no. I have not been invited on Lila Rose's show, nor will I be, I'm sure. As I said in my video a few months ago about being canceled from Matt Fradd, I've been blacklisted by Catholic Inc. because I speak the truth about this diabolical ET UFO deception, the very deception they've been promoting. And this is the truth that is the opposite of what they've been saying for decades now. And I will keep on saying it right here. And boy, do I have a lot more to expose. I am just getting warmed up. If you knew what I've got cooking right now, you would buckle up. So I'm going to come to a conclusion here now. I can't say much about it here, but I'll share a few pictures here on the screen from last month, from where I was last month. Draw your own conclusions from that, if you will. I've got a lot more to say about this soon. The point is, please subscribe and stay tuned. You won't want to miss what's coming next. God bless you.